Well, first off, Scott, super excited to talk to you today. I mean, you and I go back almost 20 years now, which is pretty awesome. What's kind of fun, and what I said is, I'm working on a book concept, and I want to talk to founders or people who've been through the trenches and really just kind of dissect some things that you've learned in the past. But what's really fun is, even though I've known you for 20 years, is taking who's Scott, putting it into ChatGPT and kind of coming back with the backstory, which is always fun. Unfortunately, I didn't come back with any really juicy things, but which is good or bad. So where I want to start, Scott, is really, you've got an amazing history. I mean, you've been in kind of leadership roles for most of your life, but there was a certain point, I think, after the time you had at Scott, where you made a conscious decision to do your own thing. So maybe just kind of start there. What was the main reason for you to take that first leap to being a kind of a solo entrepreneur, CEO, founder?
Well, it really came back to, I'd been involved as a CEO of a local company, and we had done a lot of growing. We even got to the point where we brought in PE funding and strong leadership. But as does happen with PE money, then we missed a few key points. We had the currencies go the different ways, things that are just normal. And then the PE firm basically took it out on me, which, by the way, is what happens when you're the CEO of a company and you don't hit your numbers. So I don't ever blame them, but I came home to my wise wife, Lori, and she said, "Hey, Scott, no problem on taking another company, but you can't go down the road of growing these companies where you build a product, usually overseas. You need to fund buying, opening letters of credit, bringing in a lot of cash, because then what ends up happening, you need to go out and sell 40, 50, 60% of the company to other people. And then if you don't perform, you put yourself at risk." So really, she gets the credit. So I said, this time I'm going to start a business where I can actually start a company with $20,000, which is not was fortunately not a big lift for me, and start a services business, digital marketing, where because we were hiring people, we needed to invest, but we didn't have to buy inventory, which required that working capital, those personal guarantees, putting your house on a personal guarantee. So that's really the road to doing CrankTank.
Okay, so you're kind of always in the position of, because you've been in the outdoor bike space and outdoor industry for a long time, which does run on the cycle of buying inventory for the next season, and hopefully you sell through. And then if things happen, like you said, you are the kind of left holding the bag. So I guess, looking at your first couple of years with CrankTank, and you're now your own boss, you have more control. I mean, what's been kind of the most valuable personal growth shift you've made in the, those first few years of being, I mean, you've been the CEO leader of things, but then I think it takes on a different flavor when it is your business now. So what are some of the things that you were either shocked by or learned that came about during that time?
Well, in this way, it isn't really new for me, but it's really back to that core thing of the three must-haves. And first and foremost, it is really strong people. I always like to say fantastic people, and then outstanding products, which, as you know from your experience, you always need to work on. Whether you're producing a physical, widget or a backpack, or whether you're making your retention marketing bring a higher ROAS or a better return, you got to keep working on those. And then, of course, you need to have the capital to sometimes take a chance. Like we're working on an AI project that, we had to be able to say, we're going to allocate a person's time and be able to afford to do it without the business being hurt. But when you really have all three of those attributes, I think the only other thing is really listening more and more to the people that you have around you. I am technically the CEO, But because of the way the world is changing, a lot of times the actual decision making is a very group decision making, and oftentimes I'm having to depend on the people that I work with more than my own natural instincts, because the technology is changing. And
Yeah.
so at some point, you have to be careful that you are making the right decisions. And I think that's probably the only other thing, is just to be a little bit patient. Sometimes you'll want to make a decision right away because you're excited, or and definitely to slow down, talk it over with the team more, make sure you get more people on board so that when you make the decision, there's a higher probability that it's the right one.
Yeah. Well, that is such a wise nugget of truth right there, is really listening to the team around you. One, surrounding yourself with amazing people that you can empower and do a great job, right? I know it's funny because we've been friends a long time, and I've always looked at you as a mentor, and it's been great to have your counsel in my career as I've developed. And you've always mentioned the 3 Ps. And so in the early days when I was still maybe at my mid-level leadership level, so kind of like, oh, that's cool, but I didn't really grasp it. And then once I moved up and started getting into more senior roles, those words of wisdom hit me quite a few times. I remember, what was Scott? Oh yeah, the 3 Ps, and then being able to kind of read some additional books. One of my favorite books is the CEO. I've got it right here on my desk. CEO Excellence, and they talk about the 3 things that separate really amazing leader CEO types, and it's focusing on the culture, focusing on your organizational design, and focusing on your people development. So once you kind of have those things, that mindset, but I think the last thing you just said was just so true, is just being able to really rely on the people around you so you make better decisions. And it isn't always just you at the top leading from the top.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that, looking at your younger self, like 10 years ago, was that the same mindset you had, in the sense of more of a group decision, or is that something you've evolved to in the last few years?
I think I'm evolving to it because the technology is changing so and so much, especially in the business that we're in. 3 years is like an eternity.
3
Um,
months.
I know some days with AI, you have to be like 3 days,
Yeah.
So I think I would say I've never had a problem with being competitive and ambitious and all of that. But for sure, the culture part, so that that's one of the things I believe in. It's really important to share bonus. It's really important to share equity. And with those, when I give those out, I always say to people, you are now a shareholder, so you have the right to walk up to me and say, shut the hell up, or you're wrong on this. We need to do it another way. And if you don't do that, key employee, you are not being a good employee, because I don't need you to be nice to me. This is not a popularity contest. This is to do the right thing so the customer benefits, so the company grows, and so that you will be successful and we will be successful. Yeah. So I think in that way, I'm more and more getting to the point of that culture is so crucial, because if you have a top-down culture as opposed to a bottom-up culture, I don't think that's going to work anymore, especially with the technology changing at the pace it's changing.
Agreed. Yeah. Again, Scott, two really cool things. And because I've been able to see the ride of CrankTank over the last 10 plus years, one thing that I always know is you guys do you put a lot of effort into making sure that you are building a team. I see the fun events you guys do. You go skiing in the winter, you bike in the summer, you really do try to create an environment. And I always love the posts and how you guys share, and you're really good at calling out people on the team for doing really good things in a way where it's celebrating that team. And I think your other point, which is really amazing, is really getting the people to understand they're part of something and they have a responsibility to be part of that and speak up, which I think is just So great, Scott. That's awesome.
Well, thank you. But I learned a lot of that from my Cannondale days, where we had a really strong culture. And I do think as the company gets bigger and bigger, you spend more time on the culture probably and less time on the actual strategy. It believe it or not, because the team is developing the strategy more and more. And you're just there to kind of create the rails.
Yeah, as you just said, as a leader, that you're evolving and the times are changing and the things are, getting pulling us. I think the more from that book I mentioned, I mean, the leaders at bigger, larger companies that are focused on those things really matter. It's that culture in people, your number one resource. I heard this the other day where someone was saying, a lot of companies forget their number one customer, their first customer is their employees. And you should treat them that way and really bring that essence of what it means to be part of that group. So Scott, what do you do to keep yourself motivated as a leader, to just, bring the passion every day? What are some things you do for yourself?
Well, I'm very lucky in that I am a super competitive person, as are you. And so I've never had a problem with motivation. If I feel very lucky about one thing, I've like so many people, I've had very tough things that have gone on in my life. But in the grand scheme of things, I have never been a person that's down very much. To say I don't have a bad day would be ridiculous. But when we go through the hard things like a divorce or something like that, those are normal hardship. But I've always been very, very motivated and optimistic. My wife probably says to a fault. I probably am overly optimistic. But if I was going to look back and say, the only thing I wish I'd done sooner, I wish I'd started CrankTank 10 years earlier. I think the recognition around trying to run companies for other shareholders is always a more challenging and also more dangerous position, because you just don't have control. At the end of the day, in this company, we can go out and have a beer afterwards and say, all right, well, are we really making the right decision? But so many times, like when you're working for somebody else and they put their money in and you're the hired help, in effect,
you have your goals and directive told to you, and that's just you're in or out. I mean, it is a tough thing. Do you think, let me ask you the question. So thinking back what you just said, like you wish you had started, what do you think was holding you back from starting CrankTank earlier?
I think it was the sense that I needed to be part of something really big. There is a lot of security that comes with that. But I think it's kind of a false security. Take my Scott Sports days. I mean, that was a very, very healthy company. But the owner was very arrogant and thought that he could do nothing wrong. And in the end, we were very successful. We grew it into a significant multi-million-dollar division for the company. But I couldn't change his viewpoint on employees or strategy. And so I spent a significant amount of time there. I fortunately made money there, but it could have been so much better. So I think that's why it probably going out on my own, and I probably just didn't have the confidence probably to go out and do it, or maybe to take the risk at that point in my career, because it's nice to know you sign on, you get a paycheck, you put in an amount of money. You got 401k, you've got a health care, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and I think too, you were you have kids, and you're dad and your family and everyone's in the community, and you're like, sometimes that the comfort in knowing, but I think it seems like it's just the comfort or security of working at a larger company or a company in general. It's just not guaranteed, anymore. It can just change in a time. Like, I mean, last 2 companies ago that I was at, owners decided to sell at the last minute. It's like, oh, great for him. He got a big payday, but
Yeah.
So,
but it's hard to know,
it's
it's
hard to
what
know. Yeah.
you can't. That's another thing I would say that's been lucky for me. I mean, I've definitely made mistakes, but I don't dwell on them too much. At the end of the day, just keep learning
Yeah.
is the important thing.
That is a good one. All right. So you're sitting down with a younger you or someone else who wants to maybe take that first step and start their own business. What are some words of advice that you would give, or kind of someone who's just like maybe thinking like, oh, being a founder is going to be so great. Like, what are some of the words of wisdom, things that you would have wished you knew before you kind of stepped into your role?
Well, I think the it's certainly well, there's two sides. One, if you do start earlier, you also have the advantage of you don't need as much, like
Yeah.
certainly when you wait till later, you've got tuition for
Yes.
college, you've got probably a
Mortgages.
mortgage on a house, you might have a car payment or two. So whereas if you start younger, I look at my son and, the guy can live on honestly like $600 a month, I think. So, you can take chances. But the other, so I think I'm answering the question of saying go younger and do it.
Yeah.
But just be sure you've done the cash planning, because that may mean, and that kind of ties into growing, it may mean you need to grow slower, even if you think you could grow faster, because if you grow faster and then you need to borrow 100,000 or, a million or 5 million, then you get back into that unenviable position where you don't have control. And now, even though you're doing a good job, you've given in essence the keys to your entity to somebody else. So if I had the choice between growing slower and control, or faster and giving up control, I would always prefer that. And that was where we were lucky with CrankTank. We've made sure everybody has skin in the game, some more than others, but we don't ever have to do anything stupid, because we've been always conservative, always putting a little bit of the earnings aside for a rainy day, so that even when sometimes bad things happen, like tariffs, or or if you think you're going to run a business and not have a recession, or have things happen that you do not expect, and by the way, you couldn't have planned, even with the best ChatGPT evaluation, things happen that you can't expect. I mean, we had that happen this year, and nobody expected the tariff disruption.
Oh God, yeah.
And it cost us some nice clients, but because we had saved, when it happened, I was definitely hurt by it, but we didn't. We adjusted, and
you were able to get through.
And we put time into. We were able to take some of our extra time we had and put that into new products and improving our products, so that I think we'll actually be stronger in 26 because of it. So that's
I think first off, totally excited that you're actually were able to get through the tough time, because I know quite a few people that have had to have not had it easy, and then to be able to invest in your new products, which I'm excited to find out more about and to be able to play with, hopefully in the coming months. But anyway, Scott, look, really appreciate you spending time sharing your journey, and your words of wisdom always land, which I always appreciate. And so if anyone wants to connect with you or CrankTank, where's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's real simple, Scott at cranktank.net, and or you can go to cranktank.net, and there's of course an info at, but always feel free to reach out, and thanks for taking the time, and I'll look forward to our next conversation or bike ride, or maybe now Nordic ski or backcountry ski or something.
It's that time of the year. So, all right. Well, thank you, Scott. I really appreciate it.